During a heated moment on live television, liberal strategist Jessica Tarlov suddenly went off script and hurled a stunning insult at President Donald Trump, calling him a psycho. And what followed left the audience frozen. Trump, never the type to let a cheap shot float by unanswered, delivered a cold, strategic counterpunch that flipped the entire situation on its head. What Jessica thought would be her bold moment quickly mutated into a viral fiasco, one that left her rattled and the country buzzing. It was a quiet afternoon on Fox News, until Jessica decided it shouldn't be. Leaning forward on the panel, she fired off her words like a blade hitting steel. Donald Trump is a psycho, a failed man, a sick president who's unfit for office. As wide. The panel locked up. The host tried to patch the chaos, but Jessica was far from done. He's corrupt to the core, she pressed on. America needs healing, not some madman screaming from a podium. Oh. Millions watched from home, stunned. Social media detonated. Within seconds, Jessica Tarlov calls Trump a psycho shot to the top of every platform. Backstage, producers panicked. None of this was in the rundown. Inside the White House, Trump watched the clip in silence. His staff glanced at him nervously. Then he turned toward them calm, sharp, almost surgical. Book me a live slot tonight. No teleprompters. It is scribed. His voice didn't shake. His eyes didn't wander. No rage. Just intention. America had no idea what was coming. Jessica. She had even less. The clip of her outburst racked up 7.5 million views in under an hour. Fox News scrambled to contain the fallout. Too late. Some applauded her outburst. Others called it professional self-destruction. Meanwhile, Trump vanished from public view. Reporters swarmed the White House gates. Questions flew like sparks. Will Trump respond? Well, 80 say. Is there a statement? And did Jessica cross the line? Well, no answers. Just tension. Inside the Oval Office, Trump sat with a cup of coffee, watching the clip again. He didn't yell. He didn't smirk. Instead, he scribbled line after line into a notebook, each word placed with intent. Melania stepped in. Are you all right, Donald? We're buddy. Trump looked up, unshaken. Never been better. I.O. He stood. Tonight I speak. And not just for myself. I'm speaking for every forgotten American. As in time. Silence swept the room. This wasn't about an insult anymore. It felt like the prologue to a reckoning. And when the world heard what Trump was about to deliver, hearts wouldn't break for him. They'd break for the truth he was about to drag into the light. 1 hour later, Fox News cut into regular programming with an urgent alert. President Trump will speak live at 8 p.m. No notes. No script. Don't rever away. Jessica Tarlov's phone wouldn't stop ringing. She ignored call after call until a private Fox executive finally reached her. Jessica, the voice snapped. You poked a sleeping lion. I grease off. I told the truth, she replied, though her voice had lost its earlier fire. Then brace yourself. He's about to make his truth louder than yours. He say you turn by 7:45 p.m. More than 60 million Americans were already tuned in across TV and streaming platforms. Jessica sat alone in the green room, staring at the monitor while nervously sipping water. Her fingers shook around the bottle. The moment had arrived. Trump stepped up to the podium. No teleprompter. No script. Just the 47th president and a microphone. He locked eyes with the camera steady, piercing, and spoke softly. America. I was called a psycho today. He paused. But let me tell you what's actually sick. 8. And with that, he began. The next 30 minutes would flip the country upside down. Tears would fall. Minds would shift. And Jessica? Trump's voice was calm, smooth, almost unsettling in its restraint. Nobody likes being called names. I've been called worse. Dozen. A beat. But what hurts, what truly breaks my heart, is seeing how far some people will go just to rip this country apart. It is. He never said Jessica's name again. He didn't need to. He aimed the spotlight straight at the truth he wanted America to hear. I've met mothers grieving sons lost to fentanyl. I've hugged veterans forgotten for decades. And today, while I was doing that, someone on TV called me a psycho. Why? You could hear the silence tighten. It felt like the air itself stopped moving. Jessica, watching from backstage, dropped her gaze. Trump went on, his voice trembling, not with rage, but with something heavier. Call me whatever you want. I can take it. But don't you dare call the people I fight for meaningless. Whoa. Veterans watching from home wiped tears. Single moms nodded quietly in front of flickering screens. Truckers pulled off the highway just to listen. This wasn't politics anymore. This was personal. And across America, hearts cracked. Not because Trump had been insulted, but because his pain sounded exactly like theirs. But while Trump spoke with conviction and grace, a storm was brewing behind the scenes. Social media sleuths started digging into Jessica's past. Old clips resurfaced one after another, moments where she mocked coal miners, snickered at religious voters, even dismissed the entire Midwest as irrelevant. A day. By the time Trump finished speaking, number Jessica exposed was trending nationwide. Jessica's face went pale as a producer whispered in her earpiece, "It's bad. Really bad. He's at." "I didn't mean it like that," she muttered, almost talking to herself. But the damage was already done. Meanwhile, Trump's team released photos from earlier that day, his visit to a children's cancer hospital in Ohio. One image went viral instantly. Trump, kneeling beside a bald young girl, tying her shoelaces with both hands. Jessica had painted him as a deranged, failed man. Free us. But America was seeing a different portrait. A humble one. A human one. And Jessica, she was no longer the bold voice of truth. Read. She had become the face of blind hostility. Even she could feel it sinking in. Backstage, Jessica sat frozen. Her phone buzzed, non-stop, missed calls, angry messages, even notes from colleagues who didn't want their names tied to hers. She stared into the dressing room mirror, mascara streaked down her cheeks. I didn't mean to go that far," she whispered. A young intern approached quietly and placed a tissue in her hand. He didn't deserve that," the intern whispered. "My mom cried listening to him tonight." 18. Jessica felt her heart cave in on itself. It wasn't the online backlash that broke her. It was that one sentence. "My mom cried." In trying to sound bold, she had forgotten the one thing every commentator is supposed to have: empathy. And Trump's answer hadn't been cruel. It had been strong, controlled, honest. That made everything worse. It made her words look small, petty, and deeply unfair. She rose to her feet and stared out at the dim, empty studio. Maybe she had just torched her own career, and the man she thought she was going to humiliate. He had walked straight through the storm, glowing brighter than he had in years. By midnight, America wasn't sleeping. They were watching. Trump's speech had spread to every corner of the country. TikTok clips, YouTube reactions, Facebook reels, Twitter threads exploding with a single word: respect. Young and old, black and white, veterans and single mothers. Even people who had never supported Trump were suddenly seeing him differently. One clip rose above the rest. A former liberal voter in Michigan recorded herself, tears running down her face. "I didn't vote for him, but that speech, that man isn't a psycho. He's a father, a fighter, and I was wrong. It���Ignite is sowed." It went viral in under an hour. Meanwhile, Jessica was trending too, just not the way she imagined. People were calling her cold, cruel, even heartless. Some demanded she apologize. But the worst blow came from an old colleague who posted, "This wasn't journalism. This was hatred dressed up as commentary." 32. Back in her apartment, Jessica sat in silence, staring at her screen. Everything had changed. But the night wasn't over, because Trump had one more message to deliver. And what he said next would move even his harshest critics to tears. The next morning, the White House press secretary released a photo that shook the nation. It was a handwritten letter from a 9-year-old girl in Kentucky named Ellie. It said, "Dear Mr. President, my daddy says you're not perfect, but you're brave. I saw you cry on TV when you talked about the soldiers and the kids in hospitals. You made me feel safe. Please don't let the mean people stop you. Love, Ellie." Trump had written back that very night. "Ellie, brave girls like you are why I keep fighting. Thank you for making me smile. Love, President Trump." I get broke. Fox News aired the exchange. Even Trump's critics swallowed hard. Jessica watched from the green room as she prepared for what was supposed to be a clarification, not an apology. But as the letter flashed across the screen, her throat tightened. Her eyes filled. "What have I done?" she whispered. She hadn't attacked a politician. She'd attacked someone's hero, someone's hope. And now even children were defending him. The red light on the camera blinked on. The segment began. Jessica breathed in, ready to read her rehearsed lines. But her voice cracked before she could get a single scripted sentence out. "I was wrong," she blurted out. I crossed a line. I spoke in anger. And I forgot something important. Note. The panel froze. I forgot that behind politics are people, and behind Trump are millions who love him for a reason I never tried to understand. Don't see. Her hands trembled. I saw Ellie's letter, and I cried, because she's right. He made her feel safe. And I made him sound like a monster. Was rooms. Silence filled the studio. Jessica wiped her eyes live on national TV. The viewers at home didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They just watched silent, stunned. For the first time, she wasn't attacking anyone. She was unraveling. and what happened next would shock even Trump himself. Jessica's on-air breakdown sent tremors through every major network. But no one expected what President Trump did just 30 minutes later. He called into Fox News Live. Producers panicked. The anchor went pale. But the confirmation came through. The call was real. Trump was coming on air. Unfiltered. Trump's voice broke through the speakers, steady, firm, almost gentle. "Jessica," he began. "I heard what you said just now. Princess." The entire studio froze. "I accept your apology. Not because I need it, but because America needs to see what forgiveness looks like. It's not happened." Jessica covered her mouth with her hand. Trump wasn't boasting. He wasn't retaliating. He was leading. "I've made mistakes too," he continued. "But I never gave up on this country. And I won't start now." "If you were now," the anchor whispered, barely audible. My God. Millions watched with wet eyes. Because in that moment, Trump didn't sound like a politician. He sounded like a father. A protector. A man who didn't kick someone when they were down, but reached out a hand to help them back up. And America felt it. After the call, Trump didn't return to the White House. He slipped away to a small veterans hospital on the outskirts of Virginia. No press. No reporters. Just him and the wounded. One patient, an amputee named Greg who had served in Afghanistan, had fallen into despair. He hadn't smiled in weeks. But when Trump walked into the room, Greg's face lit up. "Sir," Greg choked out, tears streaming. "You remembered me." "Oh." Trump knelt beside him and whispered something no one else heard. Greg's mother, standing a few feet away, broke down sobbing. A nurse quietly snapped a photo. Trump holding Greg's hand, their foreheads pressed together like brothers. That photo leaked the next morning. And that single image spoke louder than any speech. It said, "This is not a psycho. This is a president who still sees people." Jessica saw the photo on her phone. And for the first time in her career, she felt genuinely small. Not because she was weak, but because she had completely misjudged the man she mocked. Jessica sat alone in the dressing room. The newsroom hummed outside the walls, but she felt detached, as if everything had frozen around her. Her producer stepped in quietly. "The higher-ups want to talk to you." "I was no doesn't." Her stomach dropped. She braced herself for the firing she knew was coming. But when she stepped into the office, she found 3 Fox executives and a printed copy of an official White House statement. Trump had personally requested that she not be punished. She made a mistake. The letter read, "But this nation heals through restoration, not cancellation. I go." One executive looked up at her. "Jessica, you're not fired." "Mos." She stared at them, stunned. "You're getting a second chance because he gave you one. It's don't." Jessica slowly sank into a chair, tears filling her eyes. The very man she had torn apart on air was the reason she still had a job. The same man who was now winning over voters she never imagined he could reach. And deep inside her, something shifted. Respect humbling, uncomfortable, real. The next morning, a video surfaced, one no one saw coming. It wasn't from Trump's team. It was recorded by a firefighter in Pennsylvania. Jessica's own father. He held a worn photo of Jessica when she was a little girl. "I've stayed quiet for years," he said. But this moment needs the truth. With that's my 2005er. He spoke not as a father defending his daughter, but as a man who had lived through war, politics, and the cost of both. I don't agree with President Trump on everything, he said. But calling him a psycho, that wasn't strength. That was pain pretending to be power. He looked down. His voice weighted with disappointment. Jess, I raised you to fight fair. And last night, he showed more grace than you did. Oh, with that ItㅣIgnite. The video struck a nerve. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Jessica watched from her car parked outside Fox headquarters. She couldn't stop crying because this wasn't just a father correcting his child. This felt like the entire country correcting its direction. Meanwhile, inside the West Wing, something big was unfolding. President Trump had instructed his legal team to declassify a confidential memo, one outlining media influence operations inside multiple major networks, including Fox News. The documents detailed secret payments from political groups to specific hosts, including Jessica's own producer, all designed to push anti-Trump narratives. That night, Trump held a surprise press conference. He read the memo aloud. He didn't yell. He didn't rant. He didn't mention Jessica once. He simply let the truth land where it needed to. I don't mind criticism, Trump said. But when the media becomes a weapon used against its own people, that's where I draw the line. America erupted. Even lifelong Democrats began asking what else had been kept from them. Jessica sat backstage, motionless. She wasn't embarrassed anymore. She felt used. And now, millions were waking up right alongside her. As Twitter erupted and newsrooms scrambled, a quiet story emerged from a small town in Iowa. A single mother named Laura posted a photo of a handwritten letter she'd sent to the White House. Dear President Trump, I work 2 jobs. I don't have time for politics. But last night, I watched you speak, and I cried like a baby. You didn't fight hate with hate. You fought it with heart. And you made me proud to be an American again. Race. Trump read that letter at a town hall in Ohio. His voice cracked halfway through. Laura, if you're watching, you make America great again. As a Basque, the crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. No prompter. No spin. Just raw emotion. And Jessica, watching from her apartment, whispered, He's not who I thought he was. Basque overdoing. She barely slept. Dawn crept across New York in soft gold, but she felt only gray. With trembling hands, she typed a short message to the White House press office. I need to apologize in person. Before she could lose her nerve, she hit send. Minutes later, a reply pinged back. If your heart is true, the door is open. She grabbed her coat and rushed downstairs. Outside, a small group of Trump supporters stood near a food truck. One woman recognized her. Jessica braced for anger. Instead, the woman, an elderly nurse named Ruth, offered her a steaming cup of coffee. Long night? Ruth asked softly. Jessica nodded, tears stinging. Ruth smiled gently. We all mess up, honey. What matters is what you do next. It's not way. That simple kindness cut deeper than any insult could. On the highway, Jessica practiced her apology, voice trembling. Green signs pointed south toward Washington. Radio hosts replayed Trump's hospital visit and Laura's letter, their tones heavy with respect. For the first time in years, something grew in the place where cynicism used to live. Hope. She pressed harder on the gas. By noon, she would stand before the man she once called a psycho and ask for forgiveness, face to face. As Jessica raced toward D.C., President Trump was miles away at a shuttered steel plant in Baltimore, a factory once declared dead, now slated to rise again. Hard-hatted workers gathered around, hastily set up cameras. Many had lost their jobs years earlier. Today, they were getting them back. Trump stepped onto the dusty factory floor, rust crunching under his shoes. "Look around," he said, his voice carrying through the empty space. "People called this city forgotten. I call it family. To eat." A big man named Carlos, eyes shining, raised his hand. "Sir, they said this plant was gone forever. It's..." Trump's reply was quiet. "Then let's bring it back to life together." Unquote. He announced a full revival plan. Federal incentives, private investment, vocational training. Reporters whispered in disbelief as workers hugged each other, some openly sobbing. Across the country, TVs lit up with the scene. America watched men and women in worn overalls, cheering for a president many of them once doubted. Number Steelheart shot to the top of global trends. At that exact moment, Jessica's car radio picked up the live feed. She pulled onto the shoulder, tears blurring her vision. The psycho label she'd thrown at him shattered like glass. "He's giving them their lives back," she whispered, shaking. And miles away, Trump ended his speech with a promise. "No American will be left behind on my watch. Ready?" Late afternoon sunlight spilled through the White House windows as Jessica arrived, hands trembling. An aide guided her past historic portraits and into the Oval Office. Trump stood beside the resolute desk, tie loosened from the factory tour. Secret Service stepped back, leaving them alone. Jessica's voice cracked. "Mr. President, He lifted a gentle hand. "Jessica, sit." And she obeyed, heart pounding. "I watched your father's video," Trump said quietly. "He loves you. And a lot of Americans do, too, even the ones who disagree with you." Her tears broke free. "I hurt people. I hurt you. I was wrong. You was..." Trump opened a drawer and slid a folded paper across the desk. Ellie's letter, the 9-year-old girl's crayon-colored words. "Read it," he said softly. Jessica read aloud, voice trembling. With every line, her shame grew, but so did her resolve to change. When she finished, Trump spoke again, gentler this time. "America needs strong voices. Use yours to build, not break. It's no way." She nodded, sobbing. Trump extended his hand. "Start fresh." "How?" Jessica took it, tears falling onto his cuff. Flashbulbs burst. History etched itself in light. Outside, reporters sensed something massive had just happened, but none of them understood how deeply hearts had shifted. Jessica walked out of the Oval Office into the crisp D.C. air. The world around her felt quieter, not because it had changed, but because she had. She passed reporters without a word, but the look in her eyes said everything. No ego. No spin. Just humility. Back in New York, the moment spread like wildfire. A single photo, Jessica and Trump shaking hands, was shared over 80 million times in just 12 hours. But it wasn't the image that moved people. It was the silence. Jessica didn't tweet. She didn't appear on talk shows. She simply disappeared from the spotlight. And oddly, that silence spoke louder than any mic drop moment ever could. Talk show hosts began crying live on air. Maybe, one admitted, voice breaking. Maybe we've been too harsh. Maybe it's time we all just listened. Ascriber. That night, an anonymous message appeared online, widely believed to be from Jessica. It takes more courage to admit you were wrong than to pretend you're always right. He showed me that America is still listening. And for the first time in years, it feels like we're healing. He did not. Across the country, that message landed like a spark. In Arkansas, a third-grade teacher named Miss Helen paused her civics lesson and pulled up a breaking news clip. Today, she said gently, we're learning about respect. Reckoning. She played a short montage. Trump's visit to the children's hospital. Jessica's apology. Ellie's letter from Iowa. The room went silent. Even the fidgety kids stilled. One little girl finally raised her hand. President Trump didn't yell at her, she said softly. He forgave her. My mom says that's what grown-ups do. Has sove. A boy in the back brushed away tears. Miss Helen smiled. That's what real leaders do. They don't just win. They teach. Well, he stole. Parents later posted online about what their kids shared at dinner. Mom, I think I misjudged Trump. He helped that sick kid. And he forgave that lady. Awesome. They weren't voters. They were children. And somehow, they were seeing the truth clearer than many adults. Something enormous had shifted not just in the media, but in the soul of the nation. Back in New York, Fox News prepared for a moment no one knew how to predict. Jessica's return. No promo. No build-up. Just her chair placed quietly at the end of the panel. When Jessica walked in, the entire studio fell silent. She sat, steadied herself, and spoke. I don't deserve to be here. But I'm here because the man I insulted believed I could be better. Whoa. Not a whisper in the room. I called the president a psycho. But I watched him forgive me, comfort wounded soldiers, reassure children, and breathe life back into broken towns. I don't agree with all his policies. But I will never again question his heart. 2. Tears streamed down her face. And one by one, her fellow hosts, liberal and conservative, nodded. Not because they agreed with everything she said, but because they respected the honesty. America didn't need perfection. It needed humanity. And for the first time, millions saw it clearly. Donald Trump wasn't the caricature the media painted. He was something bigger. In a small home outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, 82-year-old Vietnam veteran Bill Darnell watched Jessica's tearful return. He hadn't spoken much since his wife died. His son rarely called. But something in this unfolding story, this unexpected mercy, stirred something in him. He reached for an old, dusty notebook. For the first time in 12 years, he wrote, Dear President Trump, I've seen a lot of hurt in my life. But what I watched yesterday, that was healing. I don't cry easy, but I did this time. Thank you for proving that strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's patient, still, full of grace. You gave that young woman a second chance. Now I want to give my son one too. Bracte V. He mailed the letter. No return address. It wasn't about being heard, it was about hope. And that same day, his estranged son showed up at his door, holding a printout of Trump's handshake with Jessica. They didn't speak. They just embraced for the first time in years. In Atlanta, at a small Wednesday night Bible study, a modest Baptist church gathered as usual. But this night felt different. The pastor stepped behind the pulpit and held up a printed headline. Trump forgives Jessica Tarlov on live TV. He looked out over the small crowd and said quietly, "We've all been Jessica at some point, haven't we?" Well, some nodded. Others quietly cried. "We've all said things we shouldn't," the pastor continued. "We've judged before listening. But how often do we see someone in power forgive without gloating? How often does a man mocked on national TV choose mercy instead of revenge? Well, a woman in the back, widowed, raising 3 children alone, whispered, "God used him," with the 22-3. And just like that, people began filling the altar. Not to argue politics, but to ask for healing. A visiting teen captured the moment on a phone camera, black and white, old and young, all praying together over a story about a president, a journalist, and a moment that touched a nation. The video hit 1 million views in hours. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. On the outskirts of Ohio, a 10-year-old boy named Jacob, born with muscular dystrophy, watched every Trump update beside his grandfather. Jacob couldn't walk, but he dreamed of standing someday. He loved politics, not the shouting, but the hope that someone out there was fighting for kids like him. He had never trusted the media. But Jessica's transformation, that moved him. Using voice dictation on a beat-up tablet, he wrote, "Dear Miss Jessica, I saw what you said, and I saw you apologize. That's really brave. President Trump forgave you. I think that means you're both strong. I hope I get to meet you and him one day. Maybe we can talk. Maybe laugh. Jessica saw the post when a supporter tagged her. She broke down in tears again. Then she forwarded it to the White House. 10 minutes later, Trump responded, "Get me this boy's address. I'm visiting tomorrow. It's fresh." The staff thought he was joking. He wasn't. Before sunrise, he was packing his jacket. Just after dawn, Marine One thundered over Jacob's small Ohio town. Windows rattled. Neighbors spilled onto porches, stunned. Minutes later, the presidential motorcade turned onto Jacob's quiet street. His mother, Claire, gripped the handles of his wheelchair, heart racing. Then Donald Trump stepped out. No reporters. No fanfare. Just 2 Secret Service agents, and a wrapped box under his arm. Jacob's face lit up. "Mr. President." Trump knelt down until their eyes met. "Heard you wanted to talk. Champ. Does'm. Where'd he go?" They chatted about school, baseball cards, and courage. Jacob confessed he was terrified about an upcoming surgery. Trump's expression softened. He opened the box. Inside was a game-worn Yankees cap, signed by Jacob's favorite pitcher. A small bronze wishbone on a chain. "My mom gave me this when I was your age," Trump said. "She told me real strength is invisible, but everywhere. In tree." Jacob's lip trembled. "Will you keep me in your prayers?" "I do." Trump placed the chain gently around his neck. "Every single night." "I don't." Claire broke down sobbing. A neighbor filmed the moment. By noon, it hit 30 million views under the caption, "Not politics, just love." And across America, something settled like a heartbeat, finding its rhythm again. In Manhattan, Jessica prepared for a primetime special, her first long interview since the scandal. Producers offered cue cards. She refused. "Ask anything," she told the host. "No fences." Anyway, 20 million people tuned in. Midway through, the host played footage of Trump giving Jacob the wishbone necklace. Jessica watched, eyes wet. "What goes through your mind?" the host asked. Jessica swallowed hard. "My mom collected wishbones," she said. "She told me they reminded her that God can bend anything broken back into shape. And well." She exhaled slowly. "I called that man a psycho. But today, he gave a fragile kid hope. That isn't madness. That's grace." Phones buzzed across America. "Did you hear Jessica? Did you see what she said? ADS. Then Jessica turned to the camera, voice steady but eyes wet. "Mr. President, if you're watching, thank you. You showed me what real power looks like. His we have to Dodd." The studio froze. No applause. No commentary. Just raw, stunned silence. Even the lighting technician wiped his eyes. For the first time in years, left-leaning analysts and conservative viewers felt the same thing. Respect. And deep in her chest, Jessica felt something settle, something she hadn't known since her mother passed. Peace. As night fell, something extraordinary happened. Across cities and small towns, people organized spontaneous candlelight vigils. No campaign banners. No slogans. Only simple handwritten signs. Heal our nation. Forgive. Like 47. Hope. In Washington, thousands gathered at the Lincoln Memorial. A soft hymn drifted over the reflecting pool as families held candles in the warm June breeze. Reporters whispered, "We haven't seen unity like this in decades." On the steps, Trump appeared with Melania, no podium, no press conference. He simply folded his hands as he gazed at the sea of lights, eyes shining. He spoke without a microphone, yet somehow, everyone heard. America isn't perfect, but tonight proves she's still beautiful. 8. He gestured silently to Jessica, standing just off camera. She stepped forward, candle trembling in her hand. Side by side, they bowed their heads. A veteran began Amazing Grace, and the crowd joined. Voices cracked. Candles flickered. Strangers embraced. Even hardened reporters, people who scoffed at emotion for a living, wiped tears. Drones captured the moment from above. A glowing river of candlelight stretching the entire length of the reflecting pool. The image circled the world. A nation choosing mercy over spite. And from that quiet glow rose a truth brighter than politics. Love, when given room, can still rewrite history. At sunrise, pink and gold washed over the National Mall. The vigil candles still flickered in pools of wax. Reporters whispered that many people had stayed all night, softly humming Amazing Grace under the stars. Inside the Lincoln Memorial, President Trump and Jessica sat alone on the cold marble steps, no cameras, no microphones. Just two people, sharing lukewarm coffee from the same thermos Ruth, the nurse, had given Jessica days earlier. Trump broke the silence. Grace costs nothing, but it buys everything. And Jessica's eyes filled again. I thought power was volume, she admitted. You showed me its mercy. Quote. Trump's phone buzzed. A live video from Jacob's living room. The boy, wearing his wishbone necklace, waved weakly. Good morning, Mr. President. Surgery's in 2 hours. I'm brave because of you. One day. Trump smiled warmly. You're brave because you're you, champ. I'm self. He glanced at Jessica. Let's send him off. Yeah. Gods. They recorded a quick 30-second video together cheering Jacob on. Within minutes, it exploded across social media. Tens of thousands sent messages of hope. A nation's heartbeat synced with a 10-year-old boy's. And suddenly, red and blue didn't seem like sides. Just two colors of the same flag. As Jacob was wheeled into surgery, crowds gathered outside the Ohio hospital. Radios played updates from the medical team. Bill, the Vietnam vet, and his son arrived together, holding a hand-painted banner. Stand strong, Jacob. At noon, Trump climbed onto the White House roof in private and bowed his head. Jessica, invited by Melania, joined him. Traffic slowed below as drivers honked in support. Church bells across Georgetown rang 12 times. They prayed honest, trembling. Across the country, factories paused their machines. Classrooms fell silent. Talk show hosts stopped mid-sentence. At Laura's diner in Iowa, the chalkboard read, Jacob, our love wins. Well. Then the hospital hotline rang. Surgery successful. Jacob is stable, smiling. Cheers erupted from coast to coast. Jessica collapsed into Trump's shoulder, sobbing. No cameras recorded it, only the aftermath. A president wiping tears from his eyes. And a former critic gripping the flagpole whispering, Thank you. It's Sumdang. That single image dominated every evening broadcast. A reminder that compassion can rewrite any headline. 2 days later, Jacob rolled onto the White House lawn. Reporters gasped as he stood unsteady but determined, supported by brand new braces. No one needed to guess who paid for them. People from every part of his story gathered around him. Bill, Laura, Ruth, Miss Helen's third graders. A circle of ordinary Americans transformed by an extraordinary week. Jessica stepped forward, microphone trembling. I called this man a psycho, she said, her voice steady at last. But he showed me something stronger than pride, the power to forgive and to lift others higher. We. Trump knelt beside Jacob. America, these two remind us. We fall. We rise together. That side. Jacob held up the bronze wishbone. When we pull, we both get a piece. So we both get a wish. He handed one side to Jessica. They tugged. Snap. The crowd erupted. Jessica's wish. That everyone watching chooses grace over rage. He's Lowe's. Jacob's. That we keep believing in each other. That. Fatter. And if Jacob's courage stirred a tear. If Jessica's transformation lit a candle inside you. If President Trump's forgiveness reminded you what real strength looks like. Smash that like button to keep the light burning.